Hello and welcome to a FortiWeb video on ML-based API protection. In this video, we'll focus on FortiWeb's machine learning-based API protection. It learns the REST API data structure from samples and then build mathematical models to screen out malicious API requests and prevent sensitive data leakage. It implements 3 layers of protection: schema protection, threat protection, and sensitive data leakage prevention. The schema protection model consists of 2 main functions: API discovery and API protection. It analyzes the method, URL, and endpoint data of the API request samples to generate an API data structure file for your application. If the incoming API request violates the data structure, it will be detected as an attack. The threat protection model learns parameter value patterns in API request bodies and then identify API requests with abnormal parameter values. Sensitive data leakage prevention integrates with FortiGuard's extensive, customizable database of over 500 predefined data patterns and policies. The ML-based API protection adds another layer of identification and visibility into potential exposure of sensitive information in API responses. Continuous learning of the ML-based API protection enables the model to automatically adapt to changes in the API schema. This includes handling scenarios such as adding entirely new endpoints or services to the application, updating the structure, data types, or values of existing parameters in API requests or responses, recognizing newly added optional fields or required parameters in API calls, adjusting to modifications in API endpoint paths, and adapting to altered JSON data formats used in API exchanges. All of these factors contribute to building a new continuous learning model. These capabilities ensure that the model remains flexible and aligned with dynamic API environments. Let's take a look at the ML-based API protection feature through examples. Schema violation is pretty common in API protection, especially when a strict schema is in place. Assume FortiWeb has learned the API schema of the application as shown. It defines the type, properties, and the required fields. Here comes a request whose ID value 123ABC is a string violating the schema's type definition. FortiWeb detects these type violations to ensure API data conforms to the correct structure. Another violation example is that the incoming request is missing the name property, violating the schema, which states that both ID and name are mandatory. Here is an example of minimum or maximum limits defined in the schema. A request with the age value 16 violates the minimum constraint, while another request with the age value 65 exceeds the maximum constraint. FortiWeb detects these violations to ensure API data stays within the defined limits. Let's look at some examples of the abnormal parameters found in the API request. Anomalies like code injection, command injection, SQL injection, XSS, and other threats can be effectively filtered out by FortiWeb. In this example, FortiWeb learns the pattern of parameter values. Through observation of normal traffic, FortiWeb learns that the username is alphanumeric between 5 to 15 characters. The action is one of these allowed values: login, logout, or update. The timestamp is an ISO 8601 format. When a request like this comes in, FortiWeb will know it's an anomaly because the username contains an unusual pattern with embedded script, suggesting a possible XSS attack. The action includes an unrecognized value, pointing to a potential exploit, and the timestamp is malformed, hinting at a possible SQL injection. Setting up machine learning-based API protection in FortiWeb is simple. Start by navigating to Server Policy, and simply add an ML-based API protection policy as part of creating your server policy and specify the domain names you wish to protect. FortiWeb will then take care of the rest, learning the API schema, analyzing parameter patterns, and monitoring for sensitive data in API requests and responses. Once FortiWeb detects any malicious API requests, it will automatically take the necessary actions to mitigate the threats. After you have applied the ML-based API protection policy, you can view and manage the learned schema data by navigating to API protection, then ML-based API protection. From here, the system allows you to manually add or remove API paths, update parameters, and edit the API body to fine-tune the learning process. Here, we have an example of a schema violation recorded in the attack logs. This log shows a schema violation where the query validation has failed due to the required A. Query parameter being missing, triggering a query parameter violation. Next, let's view the parameter value patterns learned from API requests. You can review anomaly samples and noisy data, and directly report false positives from the attack logs. This allows the system to adjust its model and recognize similar requests as benign in the future. Now, here's an example of FortiWeb detecting an API request with abnormal parameters, which is then recorded in the attack logs. Finally, here's how you can view sensitive data warnings. FortiWeb detects sensitive data, like personal information and credit card numbers, in API requests and responses, providing alerts for potential data exposure. To sum it up, FortiWeb's machine learning-based API protection automatically learns your REST API structure from real traffic and builds intelligent models to detect malicious requests and prevent sensitive data leaks. It provides 3 layers of defense: schema protection, threat protection, and sensitive data leakage prevention, to guard against a wide range of API threats. With continuous learning, the system stays current with changes in your API, ensuring strong, adaptive protection without constant manual updates. Thank you for watching.